I'd also like to start by thanking our sponsors, Merrimack Specialty Fireworks City, Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers, Comtree, Govero Land Services, Leader Publications, First State Community Bank, Jefferson County Health Department, Sheet Metal Workers Local Union Number 36, Laborers Local 110, Service Master by MMCT, Ortman Concrete, Alpha Media KJFF. So thank you all for sponsoring today's event. The first regular session of the 102nd Missouri General Assembly adjourned for the year on Friday, May 12th. The legislature completed their constitutional duty by approving an operating budget for the next fiscal year, which commences on July 1st. And as of today, we're still waiting for the governor to sign that. This is an over $50 billion budget and is by far the largest in our state's history. The doling out of those funds took up a great deal of the legislative time this session and should reap Missourians thousands of new jobs for years to come. Legislative leaders in the governor's office enjoyed a much more respectful and cooperative communication chain than last year, and the results can certainly be seen in a more productive legislative session. And I personally like to thank all of our legislators here today and those not present, because it was always enjoyable to be in Jeff City, especially this year. So there were over 2,200 bills filed this legislative session, and really just under 60 bills truly agreed and finally passed. Jefferson County is fortunate to have the dedication and support of each of these legislators, and I am in Jeff City regularly, I'd say at least twice a month during the session, and each time I visit, each one of those representing Jefferson County make time for me and other representatives from Jefferson College to hear about and to listen to us about what our needs are and interests for the county. So thank you all very much. Now, to get started today, we will begin with Senator Elaine Gannon, who represents District 3.
Well, good morning, and thank you to whoever prepared the delicious breakfast this morning. I want to thank you for inviting me to be here today. Thank you to the Jefferson County Growth Association for hosting this event and giving the legislators an opportunity to talk about how session went for them in 2023. Last but not least, thank you to KJFF for broadcasting today's event for the many listeners in Jefferson County. Well, the final gavel fell on May 12th to signal the official ending of the 2023 legislative session. While debate was contentious at times in the Senate, I believe that it was truly a productive session, five-month session in Jeff City that resulted in positive outcomes for Missourians. I filed numerous bills in the session this session, or in the Senate, I should say. First and foremost, I am grateful to have ushered in Senate Bill 45 across the legislative finish line. This was a priority bill for the governor and also the president of the Senate. Right now in the state of Missouri, the state of Missouri is the has the sixth highest maternal mortality rate in the country. Also, right now, low-income pregnant women, from the day that they deliver that child, they receive 2 months of postpartum care. This bill, Senate Bill 45, will extend postpartum care to 12 months for those low-income women. Some of the many illnesses that can transpire during postpartum time would be things such as anxiety, depression, loss of hair, weight loss, heart issues, fatigue, and many, many more. And a lot of times those issues do not affect a postpartum woman until maybe 5-6 months after they deliver their baby. Sometimes they might, let's say have depression right after they deliver the baby, but that depression can continue for many months. So I'm just really excited about it. Right now, we're waiting for the governor to sign Senate Bill 45 and get his signature. I also had 7 other bills that made it across the finish line as amendments on other Senate bills. Early in May, the governor put out an announcement to the legislature that he wanted to see a transgender bill on his desk before session ended, or he would call us back into session immediately. So, on May the 10th, the General Assembly sent 2 proposals to the governor, which I believe will help protect children. The Saving Adolescents from Experimentation, or SAFE Act, prohibits healthcare providers from performing gender transition surgeries or prescribing cross-sex or puberty-blocking medications for minors. Then the second bill was sponsored by, or carried by, Senator Holly Rader out of the Boot Hill, and it's Senate Bill 39, and that restricts biological males from competing in sports designed for females in our state's public, private, charter, and post-secondary schools. Thank you. I'm thankful Senate Bill 39 passed, ensuring a level playing field for our young female athletes. And as a former teacher and coach, I think we certainly made the right decision there. I'll close with a brief summary of the operating budget for 2024. In addition to fully funding the foundation formula and transportation costs for K through 12 schools, the budget sustains the pay raises for our hardworking teachers, allocates additional funding for child care programs, and dedicates nearly $3 million to widen Interstate 70 to 3 lanes from Wentzville to Blue Springs. Myself, along with the legislators sitting up here, we all rallied our budget chairs, me in the Senate, the rest of them in the House, and we were able to secure $25 million for the port, Jefferson County Port. So we're proud of that. Most of you have heard about the James Hardy Company that's going to be coming to Jefferson County, which will be located in Crystal City, and that is going to be amazing. It will provide many jobs for Jefferson County, and they will be good paying jobs. So we look forward to that. We secured for that, what did we secure, you guys? $12 million for the funding of a bridge that will need to be built in order to get those trucks to and from James Hardy out to the interstate. And those trucks will be going all day, every day. So I think there will be some other people that will talk a little bit more on that. And let me see where I'm at here. I just want to say that I appreciate all of you and your support. I have 2 ladies in my office, my Chief of Staff, Heather McNally, and my Executive Assistant, Janet Land. They could not be here today, but anytime you call my office and speak with one of them, I guarantee the message gets to me, and then we get to work almost immediately on whatever that need is. So feel free to contact my office. Feel free to call me at home or wherever, my cell phone. You can call my husband. He has my number. Okay? And thank you for all you do for Jefferson County.
I just want to add to Senator Gannon, her staff is super responsive, so thank you for that. And I will tell you, we were there this year, and when she says she has an open door, I remember we have a leadership academy that we do with Mineral Area College, and 3 of the participants, I think at least 3, were former students of hers. So there's a group of 20, 10 from Jefferson College, 10 from Mineral Area. We had appointments with our legislators that day, and she walked right up to them, said, "Tell me your names, but I know I taught you." So it was great to see that. And while we're standing there, someone else was waiting, and she's introducing herself to everyone in the academy. And this person was for a different issue, and she was like, "I'll get back to you. Just wait a few minutes. I want to talk to them first." But it was really great to see because that person didn't have an appointment or anything, and of course she had an open door. So thank you. So now we are going to move on to our House of Representatives members that are here today. And representing District 115 is our senior representative for Jefferson County, and that's Cindy Buckeye Courtway.
Good morning. I am Cindy Buckeye Courtway, State Representative for District 115. Thank you so much to the Jefferson County Growth Association, as well as Jefferson College, which I graduated from here, so I'm super excited to be back here. Thanks so much for hosting this event today. So I want to go briefly into some of my responsibilities in the House with my committees. I was so blessed this year to be the chair of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. It was a super committee, and as everyone knows, Jefferson County, we're booming with transportation, with I-55, with our ports. Also, we've got rail here too, so it's exciting to be the chair of that committee. I'm also on the Consent and House Procedures Committee, the Ethics Committee, and boy, did I think the speaker hated me when he put me on that committee. That's the committee that you never want to meet. If anyone does anything wrong, we get to hear that. So, also on Healthcare Reform, the Rules Legislative Oversight Committee, the Joint Committee on Government Accountability, and the Joint Committee on Transportation Oversight. As Senator Gannon mentioned, her lovely ladies in her office, E.J. Fleischman works in our office, and I must say, David Castile and I have the best legislative assistant in the House. I'm also the president of the Women Legislators of Missouri, which is a bipartisan group. We work together to empower young ladies. We raised thousands of dollars. We give out scholarships to young ladies who are graduating from high school. I believe we gave out $21,000 scholarships this year. This session, I filed 15 bills. Although a lot of them didn't get across the finish line, I will certainly be working hard this next session to get some of them moving. But some I'm extremely proud of. House Bill 1005, that had language that specifies what a diligent search for a grandparent or other relative of a child removed from the custody of their parents must include. This ensures that a child is placed with the family first before other arrangements have to be made. This helps keep stability in a child's life. This was passed as an amendment in Senate Bill 186, and it's awaiting signature on the governor's desk. House Bill 396 creates provisions relating to the implementation of policies and procedures to reduce surgical smoke plume. This occurs when laser surgery is performed. This is a toxic chemical that can cause cancer from breathing in these chemicals. This will ensure hospitals have an evacuation system in place to reduce the toxins and is a step in the right direction for the safety of not only our operating room doctors and nurses, but also those patients having the surgery. This passed on House Bill 402 and is awaiting the signature of the governor. House Bill 916 created provisions to protect our children from receiving the hormone therapy or gender reassignment surgery, which Senator Gannon spoke about. Although my bill did not get heard or it didn't get the committee hearing as there was other bills that did, I'm so excited that we were able to pass that to protect our children. Sometimes it's, you know, we ourselves don't want to be remembered as, oh, that's the person that sponsored this. We want to be remembered as the legislature who was able to protect our children or to do good, not only as an individual, but as a group together. So I was extremely excited that we passed those bills. House Bill 1371 would require mental health to be taught in our schools starting in 5th grade. We are losing children at an alarming rate to suicide. And I feel we need to start early, teaching our children what to look for in their friends and in themselves, and where they can get that help. Losing one child is one too many. This is so near and dear to my heart. Not one of you in the room, I'm sure, has not had someone who has not been affected. It's horrible that our children feel that that's their only option. We need to help them. We need to give them tools in their toolbox. And I believe starting at an early age, like 5th grade, helps us get to that point to where those kids get that help they need. So since it did not pass this year, that will be one of the first things I file next year. My husband and I participate in a suicide awareness walk every October. It's called the BB 5K. They've had it 4 years so far. It's in honor of a young child, a 13-year-old, who took his own life. And his grandmother, instead of falling down and grieving, she chose to rise out of that and to bring something good to our community. So if anyone wants any information on that, be sure to reach out to me, because it's a great walk. It's a great opportunity to support, and it's through our Twin City Optimist Club, the Joy Club. House Bill 745 regards the safety of our highway workers and sets the fines for various versions of the crime to exactly what the highest fine was for said instance. In November of 2021, 2 MoDOT workers, one was 6 months pregnant, they were killed and another was injured very badly. This needs to be addressed, and increasing the fines just might start that process of making people pay closer attention. If the fine is $200, that's buying groceries for this week. If the fine is $1,000, that's paying your mortgage for the month. And maybe people will start to think if there's a higher fine. So although that did not pass, we had a great hearing on that. The MoDOT workers, both families, came and spoke. It was so touching. There wasn't a dry eye in the committee room. That was heard in my Transportation Infrastructure Committee. Even MoDOT, they came and spoke, and their representative, he was so very emotional. No one wants to see any of our workers die that way, so we need to do something to help them. And then, as Senator Gannon mentioned, our budget was extremely high this year, but we had money for many, many wonderful projects. So I am going to talk about a few of them, which Senator Gannon had talked about a few of them. But I'm happy to say that the Jeffco group of representatives, along with Senator Gannon, were able to secure that $12 million for the road infrastructure to help ensure James Hardy Company can come to Jefferson County and not have to drive their 150 trucks per day right in front of the hospital. The route that we're going to be taking will keep them away from the hospital, and that's keeping all of our residents safe. We reallocated the $25 million for the port to continue moving forward with that project. We fully funded the foundation formula for public schools, fully funded transportation for schools. We passed legislation for higher teacher pay across the state, and we're helping to put our children first. We also put a huge amount of funding in place to make I-73 lanes in both directions from Blue Springs near Kansas City to Wentzville. It's $2.8 billion. Funding for the project, $1.4 billion is in general revenue, and the other $1.4 billion will come from bonds. Also, we allocated $25 million for environmental studies for Interstate 44 and US Route 63, and $50 million for safety improvements at railroad crossings. $300 million to build a new 200-bed psychiatric hospital in Kansas City. $112 million in funding to support Missouri's veteran homes. $86.2 million for for nursing home rate increases to help those nursing homes, to let them continue to provide quality care to some of Missouri's most vulnerable. $171 million for pay for workers who provide care to people with developmental disabilities. $33.3 million to increase staffing in the Children's Division by 134 employees. And Jefferson County's own Judge Missy is extremely, extremely grateful for that. $10 million for autism research, a 20% pay increase for Missouri State Highway Patrol officers to help with staffing shortages, $247.7 million to continue broadband expansion efforts. If there was one thing that COVID taught us, it's the fact that we don't have very good internet services here, and we have children who had to try to do their homework at home, and they just couldn't do it because they didn't have those services, and they'd have to go to the local library, the local Burger King, to hook up on someone else's Wi-Fi. So, at the very end here, I'm going to conclude with saying I have completely enjoyed serving the 115th District for this last 3 years. And I want to thank all of the new representatives that you'll be hearing from shortly from this year. They have all been doing a great job representing Jefferson County, along with our senators. Thank you again for allowing me the pleasure of serving in the 115th District, and also for allowing me to serve Jefferson County. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. As Representative Buckeye Courtwhite just said, we have several new representatives representing us here in Jefferson County. And I will say it's great because they're all familiar faces here locally, being very active in different ways. So it's been, for lots of reasons, redistricting, term limits, et cetera. We have new faces, and they're doing great work for us here. So I'm doing them in alphabetical order. So we'll start with Representative Phil Amato in District 113.
Good morning, everyone. I've got to be the luckiest guy in the world. I get to go to work 5 days a week with all of these folks at the state capitol, and we spend more time with each other, I think, than we do with our families. And the thing that I can't stress enough is the big committees in Jefferson City that all the action is in. We've got somebody from Jefferson County represented on those committees. As Cindy said, she's the chairman of transportation. All the money for roads goes through her committee. I happen to serve on that committee with her, and watching her weekly run that committee, and how she is organized and gets this stuff done, and how she makes sure that Jefferson County is in the mix all the time is amazing. The lady is very, very talented, and we are lucky to have her. I know these folks, they'll tell you the committees that they're on, but I'm going to brag on them a little bit. Renee, she's on budget. Now, $50 billion, get your head around a budget with a B. $50 billion, that budget's about that high. And she requested to be on the committee, and the Speaker of the House accommodated her. And I'm telling you, every time I'd be walking in the House, she'd be going to a meeting, talking about money, trying to get somebody that was trying to get funding for their county. And I'm telling you, she did an outstanding job as a freshman on that budget committee. The rest of us, we've got economic development. David and I are, Castile and I are on. We've got Kenny on insurance. We've got education. We got all the major things covered. It was funny, I went after, I'm going to just tell you a couple stories because they were all talking about everything that I was going to say anyway. But one of the functions that we went in the evening, a couple of us from Jefferson County walked in, and some lobbyist said, "Oh, here comes the Jeffco Mafia." So I took that as a compliment, because one of the examples that the senator wanted me to expound on today was the James Hardy project. They called a meeting. It was a dinner meeting, and by the way, lobbyists can't buy you even a donut anymore, so we had to pay our own way to this dinner. Am I right, Senator? So we were all there. Everybody from Jefferson County was there, including Senator Gannon, and we were trying to talk about the deal breaker on James Hardy was that road. We could not bring those trucks past that hospital every day. So how in the world were we going to get this thing done? And so James Hardy's people were there. Some lobbyists that they hired were actually in the room. And so they said, well, the person we have to get to is Cody Smith, which is the most powerful person probably in the House. He's the head of the Budget Committee. And when you go past his office, which is next to the speakers, there's 15 deep outside his office every day looking for money. And earlier that week, I had a bill that was to try to keep intruders out of school buildings, public school buildings. And so I met the lady that takes care of that for the speaker's office, and I said, I'll meet you outside the speaker's office and give you this bill. She fell in love with it. She said, well, it's going to take money. You got to get this, you got to get the Cody. And I said, the man's got 15 deep outside his office all the time. She says, come on. So we went around the 15 deep, went in the office, and we were talking to his staff as he came out of the office and hearing what we were discussing. And then he said, I like what you have to say. How about I meet with you a half hour next week? And I said, no, no, no. You got to be the busiest guy in the Capitol. You don't need to be bothered with me. And he said, no, no, I know who you are. And I said, what, the oldest freshman in the House of Representatives? And he said, well, I wouldn't put it that way, but I know who you are. And he said, I'll accommodate you for a half hour next Wednesday. So I said, oh, okay, great. And so he took a copy of the bill that I had, and okay, so that story goes on to a different story. We're in this dinner meeting talking about James Hardy, and everybody says, we've got to get in to see Cody Smith. But it's like trying to make an appointment with the Pope or with the President of the United States. You can't get in to see him. And I listened to everybody. I raised my hand sheepishly, and I said, well, I got an appointment with him next Wednesday if that'll help. So then the smartest thing I probably did while I was up there is, since it had to do with a road, I said, our spokesman needs to be the chairman of transportation, which is Cindy. So we went in there as a collective unit. I went back to Cody's office. Cookies always work, so I gave him a tray of cookies to him and his staff and said, hey, we're going to hijack the meeting a little bit. I need 10 minutes for this bill I'm going to introduce, but we need 20 minutes for Jefferson County. Cindy did an excellent job of when we all got into the room with him, of talking about how important this investment in Jefferson County was. It's $500 million for phase one, $500 million for this county. And if phase one is successful, as we all think it will, the second phase is equally as big as the first phase. So you're talking within 5 years or better, we could have $1 billion investment in Crystal City, Missouri, and that road was the deal breaker, and we were able, all of us from Jefferson County, able to get in that room with Cindy leading the charge and get that road for this county. And I think that was the best thing we did. I was told when I got up there that freshmen don't introduce bills, and I guess I didn't get the memo. And I had 4 bills that I took with me, and one was on keeping the intruders out of school buildings. One was on making a tax credit program for anybody donating to a nonprofit hospital, and the food pantry tax credit program that was already in effect keeps hitting the cap, so I wanted to raise the cap on that. And the 4th bill was originally Jeff Florida's bill when he was in the legislature that he got passed, and it was for first responders killed in the line of duty, that their family would receive from the state $25,000. And $25,000 when he got it passed was a lot of money, but today it doesn't get you much more than in getting buried, much less letting the family get the pieces picked up. So he always wanted to amend that and get it to $100,000, and that was my 4th bill that I put in. I got 3 of the bills passed in the House of Representatives, 2 of them inside a Senate bill, and on the last day, the Senate bill imploded. So I learned what not to do next go round. But anyway, it's great to be here. It's great to serve with these people on a daily basis, 6 months of the year. And I hope in the next session we'll all be, there's 5 freshmen out of 6. So I hope the next session all of us freshmen will be a little bit smarter, and we'll be able to even do a little bit more for the people of this county. Thank you very much for having me.
Never say you're too busy to meet with me if it's about with the budget chair. Next, we have Representative David Castile, District 97.
Thank you all very much for your support. As Phil had said, we don't get too much done as freshman legislators, but it's nice to get the experience, get to know everybody who we're working with. My background is I'm a father, was a single father for a long time. I met a wonderful girl. We've spent the last 3 years together, and both my son and my girlfriend are very supportive of me in my pursuit to serve my community and my county. I'm a business owner, so I started a business when I was about 20 years old. That's why I look so young as I do. I've been in business for 20 years, so at my 20-year mark, I decided to start serving the public at a greater capacity. When I went into business, I wanted to go into business to help people. So I learned to help them through leadership and guiding them on their way, whether it be a credit issue or a credit score issue, savings, how to save for a car, how to finance a car. These are the things I like to share with my employees as we work together on a weekly basis. Those meetings take place on Fridays. They used to be on Wednesdays in the middle of the week, and then the legislature job came into play, and we just had to shuffle some things around. But since then, I've helped guys that work for us to quit drinking, to quit drugging, to start saving their money, and to raise the bar for what they expect out of themselves. In that same capacity, I became the president of the Roofing Association of Missouri, which is called the Roofing and Siding Contractors Alliance, and there I serve the community that I represent, the roofing industry, the siding industry, and it's a unified group of union and non-union members representing the distributor branch of our industry, the manufacturers who make all the material that we have in our homes and buildings, and then of course the contractors who install that. Been on the board for several years and just became the president this year. It's a 2-year term, and so I'm juggling being a father, business owner, association manager, and now legislature, which is a challenge in and of itself. But I've been taught by my grandmother very wisely to teach me that you have to embrace the challenges to improve upon your foundation. So be thankful for those challenging days because they teach us, make us more aware, and they teach us how to what we're capable of in handling it. She said that you go into the day one person, you come out of the day a completely different, stronger version of yourself. So you're basically born again. So that process can only happen as long as you embrace those challenges. So back to the legislature. I'm in my first year, my first term, and I was very fortunate enough to work with all the people that you see here behind me, but also all the other people in the Capitol. The Capitol is full of amazing people, and I had my issues for running, things that were important to me, but when you get inside the Capitol and you realize that all the state's problems converge right there, it's easy to lose focus and to be distracted from the things that you initially got involved with to then start concerning yourself with other things that weren't on your radar to begin with. Fixing an issue with funding for the 911 board was not on my radar, but when I came to the Capitol, it was presented to me that our county was defunded in a way that was basically equivalent to half of its funding. It's just a few lines of language in a bill. I think it passed in 2019. All of the charter counties of the state of Missouri get a half of a cent for every sales tax transaction to fund their 911 board. Ours was funded by telephone landlines, and then as technology evolved, those landlines were less and less, and so our funding became smaller and smaller. We also needed to upgrade technology to accommodate the use of cell phones, and so cell phones, you want to call 911 after you've fallen off the road. Well, you need 911 to know where you're at, and that technology had to be invested in by our county to support our constituents. So it was the sales tax became a solution. At some point after that, it lost half of that funding to only receive a quarter of a cent, which was not fair to the people of this county. And so we worked hard, all of us together, to fix that. And so once we brought it to the attention of the House was very supportive, its leadership was supportive. We had good committee hearings, and then we started with the Senate. And Elaine Gannon sponsored the bill that she carried the same version of the bill in the Senate. So it's kind of how it works. While we're working in the House, trying to get it through our processes, you want to make sure that you have a senator who's going to be working to get it through their processes as well. And then at the end of the session, usually those two bills merge into one bill, and we get it done. In this case, we got it done as an amendment, which is just to say that it's one of those bills that nobody likes to hear about, where there's a lot of things in one bill, and I think Nancy Pelosi said we got to pass it to see what's in it. Well, that's kind of how it works because it's on a limited amount of time. So I'm not happy about it. I would much rather pass bills that have just one issue. But as long as the content of the bill matches the title of the bill, it's fair game. And so towards the end of the session, whenever things start getting heated up between, legislators and constituents and industries, it's really important to get these things passed, and so deals start getting made, and that's how that was done. I think we were on 186 as well that passed the Senate bill. So I was really fortunate to have that happen because it was one of the things that, that you're told that you're not going to get a bill passed in the first year, your first term, and I was very fortunate to have gotten that done. The other thing we worked on was there was a really bad bill regarding eliminating the titles of foreman, journeyman, apprentice from some of the building trades that included boilermakers, pipes under pressure, fire sprinkler systems, pool heaters, and there's a big push to deregulate almost every industry because of the labor shortage that we're all experiencing. Everybody from ditch diggers to doctors, we're short on staff of people. And so the HVAC industry and some of its representatives from the St. Charles area, we're working to completely deregulate this industry, which would have put people in harm's way. I'm sure a lot of you remember that boiler that blew up in Soulard, blew straight out the top of the building several years ago and then landed a couple blocks away. I think a couple of people were killed in that. Don't quote me on that. But that's exactly the type of injuries we don't want to have and we want to avoid. And so this bill would have allowed the contractors to carry a license for mechanical contracting, but it would not have required the individuals who are installing the actual material to have a license. Neither would it have allowed the subcontractors hired by that contractor to have a license. So those subcontractors would end up working underneath the contractor's license. And if they're working over in Joplin and the contractor is in St. Louis or Kansas City, without any oversight, there could be a very bad accident now or on the job or in the future if something was to fail. So I was excited to have worked to improve the bad bill to a good bill version. Unfortunately, it was right at the end of session and that version did not pass. So we're still protected. Most of our HVAC and mechanical contractors still are required to have a license. But with regard to deregulation, there are some areas that we could probably deregulate, not within necessarily the building trades, but there's a lot of other red tape that kind of keeps us from growing at the same pace as other less regulated states. So, in closing, my main goal is just to be a good example to my son and to anyone who sees me or the things that I work on. But I'd also like to work to improve the example that Jefferson County and Missouri sets for the rest of the state or for the rest of the country. I think that there's a famous basketball coach, I bet Brian knows, but the only way to lead is by example. You can talk until you're blue in the face, but there's not too many humans that will follow your advice or apply what you're trying to give to them in their daily lives. But if you set a good example, then you might inspire people to just follow your lead, and that's what I would like to do for myself and also for Jefferson County and for the state of Missouri. So we got a couple of things done this year. Of the 60 bills that Dina had mentioned, I think 20 or 21 of those were budget bills. And so we still have a lot of work to do on improving the relationships between the Senate and the House of Representatives, but also between the two parties. A nation divided will not stand. And so it's important that we have conversations with each other on opposite sides of the aisle and at different capacities so that we don't have any stagnation in our development process. So I really appreciate the opportunity to serve you all. It's been a pleasure in my first term, my first year, my first term, and I still have a lot to learn. But with your help, I think we can get there. Thank you very much.
Now we have District 112 Representative Renee Reuter. Oh, sorry.
To quote one of my favorite movies, there is no place like home. I'm so glad to be back, guys. Probably the biggest difference between serving on the county council and serving as a state representative is the fact that as a state representative, you're pretty much gone. You're in Jeff City for half of the year. And that was probably the biggest change that I had, was not feeling as connected as I normally have with the people that I serve. So that was quite the challenge, and I still am working towards getting more comfortable with that. I love it when people from our district come up and see me in the Capitol building, so you are all very welcome to do that. I hope you do, because it really makes my day when I see someone from home, friendly faces from home. So the legislature this year passed 41 bills. That's not a huge number. Some people would say that's not a great number. But what I like to think about this is sometimes it's better not to pass bad bills. So this is not a bad thing that we didn't have many bills passed. The other thing, so let me talk a little bit about the bills that I introduced. I introduced 2 bills, and I co-sponsored 1 bill this year. The bill I co-sponsored, I'm very, very proud of. What I didn't know when I came to the legislature is that when we have a fallen hero, someone from the military, someone in law enforcement, or a first responder, when those folks unfortunately pass away, especially during their duty, the family members are asked to spend the money to put up the sign that commemorates them on MoDOT next to the state roads. And you guys have seen those signs, I'm sure. The cost of that can run up to $11,000. Now, to me, and I'm from a military family, my husband served in the Army, both of my children are serving right now, and to lose a family member like that, as a sacrifice to our country or to our state, and then add an insult to injury by asking the family to raise money or spend the money to pay for the sign to commemorate them is just an insult. And so I'm very proud to say that House Bill 882 was added to 2 different bills, and it passed twice. So I think this is going to be signed. I hope the governor signs it into law, but this is probably the most impactful bill that I signed on to this year. I introduced 2 other bills. One of them is very similar to part of what you hear on Senate Bill 190, which has to do with people over the age of 65 and the assessments to their home that they live in. It wasn't exactly the bill that I introduced, but it was one like it. And sometimes you just take what you can and be glad that it passed. So that passed also. I had a 3rd bill that I introduced that had to do with where you file to run for office for the school boards. Because right now you file those in the school districts and not with our county clerk. So I'm hoping that will pass next year. What I learned, and it was kind of difficult to watch, but a lot of these senior legislators were saying, this bill is passing this year, and I've worked on it for 8 years. So I hope I don't have to take 8 years to get anything passed, but I mean, that really does kind of set the tone of how difficult it is to get a bill to go all the way through. So it's a very difficult thing to do. The legislature also passed a crime bill that was pretty comprehensive. What came through the House is not what eventually made it to the governor, but some of the things that we passed as the House were a takeover of the City of St. Louis Police Department, and also we passed a bill that would have allowed a special prosecutor to be hired in the City of St. Louis. And now we all know that is no longer something that needs to happen, but we were very concerned with the crime rate in the City of St. Louis, what that's doing to our reputation as a region. And so that was very important for us to take a stand as a legislature to try to improve the safety in the City of St. Louis, which is one of our largest economic drivers for the state. Now, as you heard before, there are several different committees. We all serve on some committees. The committees that I served on were budget, appropriations, general laws, and pensions. And the budget meetings were intense. There were a lot of them, and I learned so much from those. I'll be continuing to learn, but it's really an honor to be on those committees. I also got put on the Gen Laws Committee. And the Gen Laws Committee is kind of a catch-all, and the Speaker sends a lot of things that he wants to get passed through that committee. It kind of was a trial by fire. Our very first committee hearing started at 4:30 in the afternoon and didn't end until after 2 o'clock in the morning the next morning. And we had, I think, a couple 10-minute breaks in between, so we were working that whole time. We were the first committee to hear the transgender bills that came through, and they were very contentious. A lot of folks came out to speak for or against them, and I learned a lot about, probably more than I ever needed to know, about transgender medication and transgender sports. So I'm glad that we got something passed. I'm hoping that that will free us up next year to do other things. I also served on the Pensions Committee. And one of the things that I thought was interesting with the Pensions Committee, I didn't know anything about pensions, so I just got thrown on that committee at the end. But we dealt a lot with things that we hadn't thought of before, ways to keep teachers into the classrooms, because we have a teacher shortage, a major teacher shortage, and not just any teachers, but the long-term teachers that have experience. So we passed a couple of bills through that committee that would allow teachers to continue to take their pension and also teach for more time in our classrooms so that we could get those experienced teachers back into the classroom to try to help with what's going on post-COVID. So, you know, being a freshman this year, it was very, very different than what I experienced on the county council. So I try to be strategic every single time that I was there, every decision I made. So the very first decision I had to make was where my office will be within the building, right? And each of us, there's this convoluted way that everybody gets a turn to pick their office. And I was not particularly blessed with a great number, so most of the offices were picked before I got there. So they showed me three different offices. The first two offices were offices where most of the freshmen end up. They have like 8 offices, all kind of crammed together with a couple administrators in front. So I looked at those, and they were nice. And then I looked at one that had just 2 legislators, besides me, would be in there. And that one didn't have any window. It kind of was set off to the side. It was very, very small. But the 2 guys that were in there, the 2 legislators that were already having offices there, both of them were sophomores, which tells me that there's something really, really special about this office, because otherwise there'd be freshmen in this office, right? So I'm thinking, I'm going to take this. The senators, or the representatives were not there that day, so I trusted them that this is going to be strategic. It's going to be great, even though it's a small office. The next day I saw Representative Brian Seitz out of Branson, and I asked him, I said, okay, so you got to tell me, why is this such a special office? And he looked up at me and he just kind of said, well, because it's next to the men's room. Freshman mistake, right? So if you ever need to find a restroom and you're a gentleman, come see my office. It's right next to the restroom. It'll help you out a lot. But it was really an honor to serve and represent the folks of Jefferson County, and I'm so blessed to have been given that opportunity. You know, some of the things that I was honored to do, I was chosen to be a deputy whip. When we whip a bill, this is when you try to find out if you got enough votes to pass it. I'm one of those, there's 10 of us, the deputy whips, and so I got to participate in that process a lot. And then I got to do some really interesting arguments on the floor. One of them had to do with foreign ownership of land in Missouri. There was a concern that, you know, if we allow too much of our land to be owned by outsiders, and Missouri is kind of the breadbasket of the country, what will happen to our food supply should we have problems with the country from which they came? So I helped with those arguments. It didn't pass this year. I'm hoping that it will pass next year, just to protect the people of Missouri strategically and keep their food safe. So that was one thing that I did. Another one, I was able to, at the last minute, use my county council experience, which was great. They debate all kinds of things on the floor, all kinds of things. And it sometimes gets really interesting, because we had one where they started debating about chickens, and the folks from the city didn't really know about roosters and how that whole thing works. So the agricultural guys get up and they educated them, and that was kind of interesting to watch. There was another guy that got up and wanted to talk about weapons, and then someone else got up and said, you know what, I teach weapons and you're wrong. But somebody got up and wanted to talk about land use and how decisions are made for land use at the level of the county council. And I was able to get up and speak very articulately, because I've lived that for the last 12 years. So that was really fun to be able to participate and give our view from Jefferson County of different things and how it might impact the state. I expect that as we get more experience, all of our freshman legislators here are going to be introducing more bills, going to be more visible on the House, And I think we're all doing a really great job. I've really been honored to serve with the folks here and to serve with all the legislators that are there in Jefferson City. I found that most of them truly care about their communities, and they really want to work hard, and they really want to do the right thing. So each of us sometimes have different ideas of what the right thing might be, but it's great to serve with people who care. And I really do believe that the folks there care. And finally, I just wanted to thank my husband for supporting me while I was in the legislature. And he's the circuit clerk right up here. So thank you for that. And again, I am so happy to be here. Please see me if you have issues that you'd like addressed in the House next year. We will be able to pre-file bills. And just like the two that I sponsored last year, they need to come from you. They need to be your voice. That's what I am, your representative, and I want to do what's best for us. And again, thank you for your time, and thank you for this opportunity.
And Representative Reuter, I assume, like Senator Gannon, if someone needs to get a hold of you and can't, just call Mike? Yeah. Okay. And the last House of Representatives of the Missouri House Rep today is Ken Waller, representing District 114.
Well, I'll take a page out of Kevin Engler's repertoire. Everybody else said everything I was going to say. So I got a few things I want to talk about. A couple things I do want to talk just briefly. This has nothing to do with what we're here today, but I had a good friend that I went to school with, lost a son, 10 years old. It was in the paper. He lost a son in an ATV accident. So if you guys could just remember the Vaughn family in your prayers. Tragedy, just a tragic thing. And you know, one of the things that I learned is I got 2 titles this past year. First title in January was State Representative of District 114, and I'm so honored to be a District 114 representative. The second title is the more important title of the 2, which is I'm a grandpa. October 21st, I became a grandpa for the first time, and to me that's the best title. And I was a little late for being here, but it was bottle time because we're keeping the baby for 3 days while Mom and Dad take a few days off. So what it does, it puts it back into perspective of what our jobs are. We're public servants, but really we should be family first. Well, God first, family second, and everything else should matter after that. So, you know, those are the most important things. One thing that I know you guys probably just forgot, but veterans, I mean, if you're a veteran out there, thank you for your service. I mean, there's not enough things we can do for veterans out there. You know, when they came up here and spoke, everybody has this perception that Renee and I never got along because I was the executive and she was the county council chair the majority of her term. Renee's a pretty smart individual. She has a lot going for her. She knows a lot of things. We've actually became good friends this past year. I think she would say that if she was up here. And no, I didn't pay her or give her campaign contribution to say, okay? I'm just being honest right now. But it's amazing that, you know, I've known Phil and the rest of them, of course, the senator. I mean, what can you say about Elaine? And David Castile, what a great addition. But the one person I want to acknowledge more than anybody is Cindy Buckeye Corway. And why I want to say that is because she's the senior representative. Now, she may only be a sophomore, but that's important because she has 2 years under her belt that we don't have. And being the chair of transportation, which I believe was a God thing, that's my opinion, the way everything kind of worked out, she became the chair of the Transportation Committee. That's huge because if you remember, for years, Becky Ruth was the chair of transportation. And when it comes to 55 and 70 and all that, I'm not saying it all goes through her, but she has a lot of input of what goes on when it comes to infrastructure. I was fortunate enough to be on a few committees. Workforce development, I thought that was a great committee for me. Elections, I guess because I was a county clerk, I was put on the elections committee. Insurance, as I think Phil stated, I was on the insurance committee. I've been a licensed insurance agent for 30 years. And the last one was I was on the transportation accountability team. So a lot of people came up to me and they said, well, what bills did you sponsor? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't sponsor any. Well, my God, are you doing your job? Well, the one thing that I learned as county executive and in other positions is, you know what? Sometimes you think you know too much. And sometimes you're too big for your britches. And I can be honest with you, I thought I knew a whole lot when I was a county executive, and I knew everything, and everything ran through me. That's not true. If you really want to humble yourself, you learn, you put good people around you in those positions, like Dennis has done, and you learn from your mistakes. And I made a few mistakes as county executive, I'll admit it, but you always got to learn to make it better. So when it went to Jefferson City, whole different ballgame. Some people said, oh, you're stepping down, you're going down. No, I'm still representing a district. I'm representing, I'm sorry guys, I'm representing the best district in the Jefferson County. Okay, I don't want to like brag or nothing, but I'm just telling you, 114 is the best. And people want to say, well, why can you say that? It's because all the development that's going on the ports, and most of the things that's happened in Jefferson County is happening in that part of the area. That doesn't mean you can't branch out into High Ridge, House Springs, Fenton, southern part of the county. Doesn't mean you won't have ancillary businesses. But if that port gets developed like it should, and I know people say, oh, it's been talked about for years, maybe a decade or two. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. And James Hardy's just one part of it. Whenever we went into this meeting that Phil orchestrated and got everything taken care of, I'm telling you, all 6 of us spoke up and said, this is what we need. We weren't leaving out of that room until we got a commitment of $12.5 million. We weren't going to leave. And yeah, he might have got some cookies, and I think I took Krispy Kreme donuts over there a couple days later. Those things do help. You can bribe people the right way. But that was what was important, because this is important not just to my district, Cindy's district, in that area. It's important to the county. It's important to the state. And sometimes when you make votes, you have to remember that. Sometimes it's a little different when we're on the council, because, you know, Renee can attest. You're talking about districts. You're talking about certain sections of the county. We're talking about the whole state. I think there's like 115 counties. So we got to remember that when we vote on something, that we're doing it for the whole county, or I mean the whole state, not the whole county. I'll give you an example. I'm not a sports betting guy. I'm just not. I don't bet on sports. But my constituents wanted sports betting or sports gambling or whatever the bill was. So sometimes you're going to vote a way that may not be comfortable with the way you want to vote, or maybe not the way leadership wants you to vote sometimes. Sometimes you just have to do what your constituents want you to do. And those are the tough votes. Those are the tough votes. So I'm always going to be, and I know, where's Dina? Okay, she's over here. You know, my door is open door. I met you 2 or 3 times, had a great visits. I'm always going to support, obviously, colleges and junior colleges. I'm always going to support public education, always. And I'm also going to support working families. And I don't just mean unions, but mainly unions. I'm going to support those people. And there's other issues that I'm going to work on too. But I can't wait till this year's coming up. It's obviously a new year. We're freshmen, but we're really sophomores because it's our 2nd year, but it's our 1st term. So you've got probably, and I'm not slighting the people that were there the last 6, 8 years, because we had some good people, including the Speaker of the House, Rob Vescovo. But I'm going to tell you, the group of people that we got now, I believe, is the best 6 people we could have in Jefferson City, because they all know how to take care of their districts, they know how to take care of their people, and that's what matters. So let me see if there's anything else. I think that's it. I've done a lot of speaking before. Obviously, I was county executive, and you know, Ron Casey always reminded me, you know, blessed are those who keep it short, for they shall be asked back. So if I'm a state rep again next year, I will get asked back. So maybe next year I'll talk a little longer, but I'm going to actually turn it over because Jennifer Hoskins is after me. Oh my God, she's awesome, and along with the rest of them. But I'm going to turn it back over to Dina, and thank you for allowing me to serve the District 114. Thank you very much.
I hope that you're right, that title of grandparent is best, because I get to be grandma come December for the first time, so and I'm looking forward to that. And we are now going to transition to our federal representatives that are here today, and with hadn't changed too much, but with redistricting, it did affect our district a little bit different. And we are going to start with Jennifer Hoskins, and she's the District Office Director for Congressman Blaine Lichtenmeyer.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak today on behalf of Congressman Luke DeMeyer, and welcome to Missouri's 3rd Congressional District. This Congress, Congressman Luke DeMeyer serves on the House Financial Services Committee as chairman of the subcommittee on national security, illicit finance, international financial institutes, as the vice chairman of the House Small Business Committee, and on the Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. Having spent years in Congress on the House Financial Services Committee, keeping tabs on our nation's financial system is something Congressman Luke DeMeyer is very passionate about. As a former banker and bank examiner, his experience allows him to approach the issues on this committee with a first-hand perspective. Our economy and financial system affect every household in America, so ensuring the health of both is critical. Families should be able to pay affordable prices at the grocery store, have reasonable gas bills, and save for their children's education and their own retirement without worrying. Getting the government out of the way so all this is possible is always high on his list. Congressman Luke DeMeyer is continuing to serve in leadership on the House Small Businesses Committee as chairman. America really rallied against small businesses during the pandemic, and while many of those issues are thankfully behind us, Congressman Luke DeMeyer is a strong advocate for ensuring small businesses don't get bogged down by government regulation. Cutting red tape and helping small businesses access the resources they need to succeed supports our job force and local economies, which is a win for everyone. This Congress, Congressman Luke DeMeyer has been especially focused on China with his roles on National Security Subcommittee and the Select Committee on the CCP. As we saw with the spy balloon that flew straight over Missouri in plain sight, I was getting calls from people who said, I see it right now. It was in the 3rd District. The CCP is becoming increasingly aggressive. The congressman believes America is doing too much business with the CCP and inadvertently funding their activities, which needs to stop. So I've let you know what he's doing in Congress, but hearing from constituents is another big part of his job. Getting feedback helps him serve the district that much better. So if we can hear, I encourage you to stay in touch with our office regarding issues that could be helpful with Jefferson County. So whether you need assistance with a federal agency or trying to find out if federal grants are available for your project, or know someone who is considering the U.S. Service Academies, please do not hesitate to reach out to our office. We are here to help. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak and be here on behalf of the Congressman. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. We are going to move on to Mr. Madison Baker, and he's the District Director for Congressman Jason Smith.
Well, good morning. My name is Madison Baker. I'm the District Director for Congressman Jason Smith. I lead the Congressman's in-district operations, which include 28 counties, 5 district offices, and 8 staff members, including myself. Biggest news for the Congressman, he was elected the Ways and Means Chairman earlier this year. The Ways and Means Committee controls all tax, all trade, and significant portions of entitlement programs. Brief history on the legislation that we've passed this year, and then where we're moving forward to. Of course, we did pass a bipartisan debt limit bill. We passed the Vet Tech Authorization Act, which funds veterans that have incurred debt that are seeking training for high-tech skills. Yesterday, the Congressman passed 2 bills that he had written, which cuts IRS burdensome paperwork for small businesses, as well as the most bipartisan trade agreement in the Congress's history, which is a trade agreement between the United States and Taiwan, so that we remain competitive with our adversary, China. Future looks, we still have the spending bills to complete, and if we don't get that completed, what was in the debt limit bill stated that if the 12 spending bills do not get completed, that we would fall back on 99% spending from the previous spending bill. So that would include a 1% spending cut. We do have the farm bill to complete this year, but in that debt limit bill, we did include work requirements for SNAP and TANF, so we don't have to complete that this year. I want to say that the congressman this week announced that he would be having a closed executive session to discuss an IRS whistleblower who has reported fraud and misconduct by a high-profile individual in the U.S. government. And he will be on Hannity at 8 o'clock tonight on Fox News to discuss that, so make sure that you tune in. Thank you for allowing us to work for you. I want to introduce my colleague, Miss Donna Hickman, who... Right? Who works out of our Farmington office and covers the portion of Jefferson County that's in the 8th Congressional District, slivered by the river. So if there's anything that we can do, please contact Donna or I or any one of our district offices. Thank you.
And now we have Deputy District Director for Senator Josh Hawley, Mr. Ben Grinder.
Hello, good to be with you all this morning. Just wanted to briefly give you an update on what's going on here in Washington. Senator Hawley's emphasized that if we want to get serious about our fiscal issues in this country, we really got to be serious about China. Since the United States granted China permanent trade relations status, our trade deficit has totaled more than $6 trillion, and we've lost 3.82 million good jobs. In the state of Missouri alone, we've actually lost 60,000 jobs to China just in the last 20 years. So we've got to bring these jobs home, and we've got to bring industry back to this country. So the senators introduced legislation to raise tariffs on imports from China and to revoke their normal trade relations status. This will bring our trade back into balance and revoke and help mitigate their annihilation of our industry in this country. In fact, the legislation would direct the president to publish every year the total value of imports from the United States to the United States from China, and then also the total value of exports from the United States to China. So Senator Hawley has underscored that we can talk about budget reforms, we can talk about savings here, savings there, but until we do the work of bringing back productive capacity to this nation and bringing back good-paying blue-collar jobs that you can support a family on, we just simply will not be sufficiently equipped to address the economic challenges that we face today. Secondly, we have a full-blown crisis on our border. Nearly 85,000 migrant children have gone missing under the Biden administration, with roughly 345,000 children having come across the border unaccompanied in just the last 2 years. We now know that tens of thousands of these children have in fact been caught up in massive child smuggling and child labor operations. And so this spring, the senator wrote a letter to the director of the FBI demanding a full-scale effort to be made in order to locate these migrant children that have gone missing under this administration. Not only this, but the senator also introduced legislation to compel large corporations to eradicate any unlawful child labor from their operations. It would direct these companies to undergo independent audits on an annual basis just to ensure that they're not complicit in child labor operations. And the legislation would also assess any financial penalties on these companies that attempt to evade these audit requirements. So, President Biden, unfortunately, his open border policies have created the biggest child labor operation in history. And so Senator Hawley's been emphatic that if this administration won't act to protect kids, Congress must, and that's what he's working on. Lastly, Senator Hawley's been adamant that the American people deserve to know the truth about the origins of the COVID pandemic. In March, the senator introduced the COVID-19 Origins Act of 2023, which required the Biden administration to declassify all information regarding the COVID virus in any relation to the Wuhan Institute. In fact, the act was ultimately passed by both the House and the Senate unanimously, and it was indeed even signed into law by President Biden himself. However, this past weekend, the president violated the law by failing to release any information on the origin of the pandemic. And frankly, this is just unacceptable. From the beginning of the pandemic, China's taken really every effort to hide any information about COVID's origins from the world, and the American people deserve to know the truth. So Senator Hawley stressed to the President that he must abide by the law and release all information regarding the pandemic's origins to the American people. So that's what we've been working on. We're staying busy, and as always, if you have any questions, concerns, any federal casework issues you have, we're just one call away. Thank you so much.
And now we have Mr. Morgan Corder, Director of Field Operations for Senator Eric Schmidt.
Thanks, Tina, and thank you all so much for having us. We are so grateful. As you all know, Senator Schmidt was sworn into office in January, and so this is our first time here in this capacity, and we're very grateful and appreciate the opportunity. I want to thank Jefferson College and the Jefferson County Growth Association for hosting this event and allowing us to speak and give you a brief update on what Senator Schmidt's working on. One thing I did want to mention before I start, Representative, you mentioned the Jefferson County Mafia. I want to introduce Chris Walker. He's our field representative for our office. Chris is actually a resident of Jefferson County, and I'm going to have to interview him later to see if he's part of that mafia. So I do want to mention that. Chris, like I said, is our field representative for our office. We have an office located in St. Louis, but we are here in the community often and want to be a resource for you all. And so if there's ever anything that our office can do to help, please don't hesitate to reach out. As you all know, Senator Schmidt was serving as the Attorney General prior to being sworn in as Senator, and a lot of the work that we're doing now in the Senate is a continuation of his work as Attorney General. Last week, Senator Schmidt gave his maiden speech on the floor, which focused on American exceptionalism, the First Amendment rights that we have as Americans, and combating the administrative state that we see. So the first piece of legislation that I wanted to hit on was Senator Schmidt's Eraser Act that he filed. It was the first piece of legislation he filed, and it's the Expediting Reform and Stopping Excess Regulation, it's a mouthful, but the Eraser Act is what we've named it. So that piece of legislation would ensure that these out-of-touch bureaucrats in D.C. do not keep writing these rules and regulations that don't go through Congress, but are common sense. And so it would prevent the Biden administration from introducing new rules or regulations unless they repeal 3 or more regulations that are already on the books. What we're seeing now in DC is not what the founders intended, and so we want to try to rein those folks back in and get that through Congress. So that was our first piece of legislation that we introduced. The second piece was the Collude Act, which aims to stop the federal government's collusion with big tech to censor free speech. We saw this during our time as Attorney General. We filed a lawsuit, Missouri versus Biden, because we saw that the Biden administration was working with big tech companies to censor free speech through the COVID origins. And so this Collude Act would strip companies of their Section 230 protections if they censored free speech at the direction of the federal government. So that's something that we're really proud of. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. We're very proud of that and look forward to working on that going forward. The last piece of legislation that I wanted to mention is a bipartisan effort that we filed with Senator Ossoff. It's called the Military Spouse Career Support Act, which expands eligibility for reimbursement of qualified licensure, certification, and business relocation costs incurred by military spouses. Senator Schmidt was just at Fort Leonard Wood with the Secretary of the Army a few weeks ago and heard from military spouses and the challenges that they face. And this legislation would address some of those issues and make it easier for those folks who, their spouses are volunteering for our country, but they also are giving something too. And so we want to make sure we're supporting them as much as we can. Senator Schmidt was assigned a position on the Armed Services Committee as well as the Commerce Committee. And so those are 2 areas that we'll continue to work on. But like I said, we're really excited to be in this office and appreciate the opportunity to represent you all in DC. If there's ever anything you need from our office, please don't hesitate to reach out. We really appreciate it, and thank you all for what you do.
One thing I recognize in hearing all our speakers today is that each one of them has a story or has heard stories of what we need here in Jefferson County, and they're living that every day, whether it's in Jeff City or in Washington, D.C., and we appreciate that so much. So in closing, I just want to again thank KJFF for bringing this forum to our community today, and to all of our sponsors, which includes Merrimack Specialty Fireworks City, Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers, Comtree, Govero Land Services, Leader Publications, First State Community Bank, Jefferson County Health Department, Sheet Metal Workers Local Union Number 36, Laborers Local 110, Service Master by MMCT, Ortman Concrete Incorporated, and Alpha Media KJEF. And a special thanks to those speaking here today as they represent Jefferson County in Missouri and at the federal level. And thanks to all of you for attending today's forum. Have a great day.